Abandoned and pregnant without food in the bakery, he entered buying everything. You will never go hungry. If you're a fan of romances, subscribe, like, and tell me where you're watching from. Let's share the love. The morning light filtered through the dusty windows of Sweet Haven Bakery in Millbrook, Ohio, casting golden streaks across the worn wooden floors. Emma Mitchell stood behind the counter, her apron tied loosely over her growing belly, a secret she'd been hiding under oversized sweaters for the past 4 months. At 28, she'd never imagined her life would look like this. Abandoned, pregnant, and watching the last of her savings disappear like flour through a sifter. The bell above the door chimed, but Emma didn't look up immediately. She was counting the coins in the register for the 3rd time, hoping that somehow the mathematics would change, that $7.43 would miraculously become enough to buy groceries for the week. Her stomach growled, a hollow, desperate sound that she'd learned to ignore. "We're not open yet," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "The sign says you open at 7. The man's voice was deep, tinged with something that sounded like exhaustion matching her own. Emma finally raised her eyes and felt her breath catch. The stranger standing in her bakery looked like he'd walked out of a business magazine. Tailored charcoal suit, dark hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it, and eyes the color of storm clouds. But it was the weariness in those eyes that struck her most. This was a man who knew what it meant to carry weight. "It's 7:02, he added, glancing at an expensive watch that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Emma wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron, suddenly aware of how she must look. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping to frame her pale face. She hadn't slept well in weeks. The combination of worry and pregnancy insomnia left dark circles under her green eyes. "You're right. I apologize." She forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected over months of pretending everything was fine. "What can I get for you?" The man's gaze swept across the nearly empty display cases. Where there once had been rows of fresh croissants, cinnamon rolls, and artisan breads, now only a handful of day-old items remained. Emma felt shame heat her cheeks. Sweet Haven had been her grandmother's bakery, passed down with love and hope. Now she was watching it die, one unsold loaf at a time. "What do you recommend?" he asked, and something in his tone suggested he already knew the answer would be complicated. "Honestly," Emma laughed, a brittle sound, "I'd recommend going to the new bakery chain that opened across town. Their stuff is fresh, cheap, and they're open 24 hours. The stranger tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "That's not exactly a winning sales pitch." "No, I suppose it isn't." Emma touched her belly unconsciously, a gesture of protection. "But I'm not much for lying these days. Life's too short and I'm too tired." Something shifted in the man's expression, recognition perhaps of a kindred spirit. "I'm James Whitmore." He extended his hand across the counter. Emma hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm but gentle, and his hand was warm against her cold fingers. "Emma Mitchell, was my grandmother's bakery." "Was?" She shrugged, fighting the tears that seemed always ready to fall these days. "The bank says I have until the end of the month. Then Sweet Haven becomes part of history." She gestured to the sparse cases. "As you can see, I'm not exactly drowning in customers." James's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The end of the month, that's less than 2 weeks away." 13 days, Emma confirmed, her voice hollow. "But who's counting?" For a long moment, neither spoke. The morning sun continued its steady climb, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air between them. Emma wondered what had brought a man like James Whitmore to her dying bakery in a small Ohio town. Men in $1,000 suits didn't just wander into places like Sweet Haven. "I'll take everything," James said suddenly. Emma blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Everything in those cases. I'll buy it all." He pulled out his wallet, extracting a credit card that gleamed in the morning light. That's ridiculous. Most of it's a day old, and there's maybe $40 worth of—" "I don't care about the age or the amount." James's voice was firm, brooking no argument. "Ring it up, And whatever your best items are, the ones you make fresh, I want you to make those too. I'll wait." Emma's hands trembled as she reached for the register. This had to be some kind of joke, or maybe she was hallucinating from hunger. "Sir, I can't let you—" "James. Call me James." His eyes locked onto hers. "And yes, you can. Consider it an advance order. I'm new in town, opening a business. I'll need a reliable bakery for corporate events, client meetings. Consider this a trial run." It was a lie. Emma could hear it in the slight change in his inflection. But it was a kind lie, the sort that allowed her to accept help without feeling like charity. She'd told herself she'd never accept handouts, not after Jason had accused her of being needy before abandoning her and their unborn child. But pride didn't fill an empty stomach, and she had more than herself to think about now. "The cinnamon rolls," she heard herself say. "Those are my grandmother's recipe. They take about 45 minutes to make fresh." "Perfect. I've got time." James moved to one of the small tables by the window, settling into the chair as if he belonged there. "Would you mind if I made some phone calls while I wait?" Emma nodded, still stunned, and moved to the kitchen. As she measured flour and sugar, creamed butter and cinnamon, she could hear the low murmur of James's voice from the front. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was all business. Commanding, decisive, the voice of someone used to being obeyed. Her hands worked automatically through the familiar motions of her grandmother's recipe. Grammy Rose had taught her these rolls when Emma was 7, standing on a step stool to reach the counter. "Baking is love made edible," Grammy had always said. "You put your heart into the dough and it rises. You put in anger or sadness and it falls flat." What would Grammy say if she could see Emma now? Pregnant and alone, losing the bakery that had been in their family for 3 generations. The thought made tears blur her vision, but she blinked them away. She had to stay focused. She had to stay strong. When the rolls emerged from the oven, golden and fragrant, Emma felt a small flutter of pride despite everything. They were perfect, exactly as Grammy would have made them. She plated several, still warm, and brought them out to James. He'd been staring out the window at Millbrook's quiet main street, but turned when she approached. The expression on his face when he caught the scent of fresh cinnamon was almost childlike, wonder mixed with something that looked like longing. "My mother used to make cinnamon rolls," he said softly, accepting the plate. "Before she passed away, I haven't had any that smelled right since then." He took a bite, and his eyes closed. Until now. Emma felt something crack open in her chest, a small space where hope might grow. "I'm glad they measure up." When James opened his eyes again, they were suspiciously bright. "They more than measure up, Emma. These are—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "These are home." Obi! For the second time that morning, silence settled between them, but this time it felt different. Less like the silence of strangers and more like the quiet understanding between 2 people who recognized each other's pain. "How much do I owe you?" James finally asked, reaching for his wallet again. Emma calculated quickly in her head. "With everything from the case and the fresh rolls, call it $200. James pulled out 5 crisp $100 bills and laid them on the table. "Consider the extra a deposit on future orders." "I can't." "You can, and you will." His tone was gentle but immovable. "Emma, I don't know your whole story, and you don't know mine, but I know what it's like to be at the end of your rope. Let someone throw you a line, please." Emma's hand moved to her belly again, that unconscious gesture of protection and promise. She thought of the life growing inside her, the child who would never know his father, who deserved a mother strong enough to accept help when it was offered with kindness. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the money with trembling fingers. "You have no idea what this means." James stood, gathering the boxes of pastries she'd packed for him. At the door, he paused and looked back. "Actually, I think I do. I'll see you tomorrow morning, Emma. Same time. And I'll want another dozen of those cinnamon rolls." Then he was gone, the bell chiming his departure, leaving Emma standing in the golden morning light with $500 in her hand and a strange warmth blooming in her chest. something she was almost afraid to name: hope. Outside, James Whitmore loaded the bakery boxes into his Mercedes and sat for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He'd come to Millbrook to escape from the board meetings, from the expectations, from the woman he'd almost married before discovering she only loved his bank account. He'd bought the old Morrison estate on impulse, thinking he'd renovate it as a distraction. But walking into Sweet Haven this morning, drawn by the scent of bread and desperation he somehow sensed, had changed something. Emma Mitchell, with her tired eyes and fierce pride, had reminded him why he'd built his company in the first place, not for wealth or power, but to help people, to make a difference. As he drove toward the estate, his mind was already working. He knew what it was like to lose everything. He'd been there once, before he'd clawed his way to success. And he knew that sometimes the right help at the right time could change everything. Emma Mitchell wasn't going to lose her grandmother's bakery, not if James had anything to say about it. And maybe, just maybe, in helping her save Sweet Haven, he might find something he'd lost along the way. Himself. True to his word, James Whitmore appeared at Sweet Haven's door at exactly 7 o'clock the next morning. Emma had been there since 5, unable to sleep, using the pre-dawn hours to prepare fresh batches of everything she could manage with her limited supplies. The $500 from yesterday had allowed her to buy flour, butter, eggs, and other essentials, the first real grocery run she'd made in weeks. "Good morning," James said, and Emma noticed he looked different today. Still impeccably dressed in a navy suit, but there was something lighter about him, as if some invisible burden had shifted. "Good morning." Emma wiped her hands on her apron, trying to ignore how her heart had skipped when she'd seen him through the window. She told herself it was just gratitude, nothing more. "I have your cinnamon rolls ready." "Actually, I was hoping we could talk." James gestured to the tables. "Do you have a moment?" Emma glanced at the empty bakery. "I have nothing but moments these days. Business isn't exactly booming." They sat across from each other at the same table as yesterday. The morning light caught the silver threads in James's dark hair. He was probably in his mid-30s, Emma guessed, though the weariness in his eyes made him seem older. "I have a proposition," James began, his hands folded on the table. "I wasn't entirely truthful yesterday about why I'm in Millbrook." Emma's stomach tightened. Of course. She'd known it was too good to be true. "Let me guess. You're not really opening a business here." "Oh, I am. Just not the kind I implied." He took a breath. "I'm James Whitmore of Whitmore Industries. We own a chain of boutique hotels and restaurants across the Midwest. I came to Millbrook because I bought the old Morrison estate. I'm converting it into a luxury inn and a restaurant." Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. "So you're the one who's been buying up properties in town, the one everyone's talking about, the developer who's going to change everything." "Change isn't always bad, Emma. Tell that to the 5 businesses on Main Street that are closing because they can't afford the rising property taxes." Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Let me guess what comes next. You want to buy Sweet Haven too? Tear it down and put in another one of your luxury establishments?" "No." James remained seated, his voice calm. "I want to save it." Emma froze. "What?" "Sit down, please. Let me explain." When she hesitated, he added, "I promise, Emma. Just hear me out." Against her better judgment, she sat. James leaned forward, his grey eyes intense. "My mother grew up in a town like Millbrook. Her parents owned a small restaurant. Nothing fancy, just good food and community. When the big chains came, they couldn't compete. They lost everything." His voice roughened. "My mother always said that losing that restaurant broke something in her parents, in the whole town. She made me promise that if I ever had the means, I'd help preserve places that mattered, not destroy them. I'm sorry about your mother and her family, but that doesn't explain." "I want to feature Sweet Haven as the exclusive bakery supplier for the Morrison Inn," James interrupted. "Full contract, guaranteed orders, enough to not just save this place but to help it thrive. In exchange, you'd need to increase production, maybe hire some help. I'd provide an interest-free loan for equipment upgrades and inventory. Emma stared at him, searching for the catch. Why? You could hire any bakery, any chef. Why a failing business run by a pregnant woman who can barely keep the lights on? The question hung in the air between them. James's expression softened in a way that made Emma's breath catch. Because yesterday, when you told me to go to your competitor instead of lying to make a sale, I knew you were someone with integrity. Because those cinnamon rolls are the best I've ever tasted, and I've eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants around the world. Because I've read the articles about Sweet Haven in the Historical Society's archives, 3 generations of women building something beautiful in this community. He paused. And because I know what it's like to be alone and scared, even if the circumstances are different. Emma's hand moved to her belly. You don't know anything about me. I know you're pregnant. I know you're alone. You don't wear a ring, and there's no evidence of a partner. I know you're too proud to ask for help, but desperate enough to accept it when it's offered. His voice gentled further. And I know that whatever you're facing it with more courage than most people could muster. Tears pricked Emma's eyes, and she blinked them away furiously. She couldn't cry, not in front of this stranger who somehow saw too much. Jason, the baby's father, he left when I told him I was pregnant, said he wasn't ready to be tied down, that I'd trapped him. The words spilled out before she could stop them. I haven't heard from him in 3 months, and now I'm going to lose Grammy's bakery, and I don't know how I'm going to take care of a baby with no income, and... Stop! James's hand covered hers on the table, warm and steady. You're not going to lose Sweet Haven. Not if you trust me. Not if you let me help. I don't even know you, Emma whispered. Then get to know me. He squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. Give me a chance to prove this is real. No strings, Emma. Just a business arrangement that benefits us both. Your baking gives my inauthenticity heart. My contract gives you stability. Emma looked around the bakery, at the vintage tin ceiling her great-grandmother had installed, at the glass cases her grandmother had polished lovingly every day, at the brick walls that held a century of family memories. Could she really let it go? Could she really trust this man who'd walked into her life barely 24 hours ago? What would you get out of this? She asked finally. Really? James was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. Redemption, maybe. A chance to honor my mother's memory by doing what she always wished someone had done for her parents. And, he met her eyes again, a connection to something real. I've spent the last decade building an empire, but somewhere along the way, I forgot what it all meant. Walking in here yesterday smelling fresh bread, seeing you fight so hard to keep something beautiful alive, it reminded me. There was a vulnerability in his admission that made Emma's defenses crack further. She recognized it because she felt it too, that bone-deep loneliness that came from losing your way. I'll need to think about it, she said finally. Of course. Take your time. But Emma, James pulled a business card from his pocket and slid it across the table. The offer stands regardless of what happens with Sweet Haven. If you need anything at all, call me, please. Emma picked up the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters. Why do you care so much about whether I'm okay? James stood, and for a moment something raw and honest flickered across his face. Because someone should, and because, I don't know. Something tells me that helping you might be exactly what I came to Millbrook to do, even if I didn't know it when I arrived. After he left with his cinnamon rolls, Emma sat alone in the quiet bakery. Her grandmother's voice seemed to whisper through the morning light. Sometimes angels come disguised as customers, honey. Don't be so proud you turn them away. That afternoon, Emma did something she hadn't done in months. She called her best friend, Sarah, who'd been trying to reach her since the pregnancy news. Emma, oh my God, I've been so worried. Sarah's voice was thick with relief and reproach. You haven't answered my calls in weeks. I know. I'm sorry. I couldn't face anyone, couldn't face their pity or their judgment. Judgment? Anyone who judges you for that loser Jason leaving can go jump in a lake. You know I'm here for you, right? Whatever you need. Emma found herself smiling for the first time in days. Actually, I might need some help. If I take this contract I've been offered, I'll need to hire someone. You still hate your job at the insurance office? With the fire of 1,000 suns. Why? Are you offering me a position as your assistant baker? Maybe, if you don't mind the pay being terrible and the hours being worse. As long as I get to work with you and eat those chocolate croissants you make, I'm in. But Em, what contract? What's going on? Emma told her everything. About James, about the offer, about her fears and hopes tangled together like dough that hadn't been properly kneaded. So, let me get this straight, Sarah said when she'd finished. A handsome millionaire walks into your bakery, buys everything, offers you a life-saving contract, and doesn't want anything in return except good pastries. Emma, this is like something out of a romance novel. It's not like that, it's just business. Uh-huh. And I'm the Queen of England. Emma, I haven't heard that tone in your voice since, well, ever. Not even with Jason. What tone? Hope, Sarah said softly. You sound hopeful, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit interested. I'm 7 months pregnant with another man's child. I'm not interested in anyone. Okay, sweetie, whatever you say. Sarah's smile was audible through the phone. But for what it's worth, I think you should take the contract. Grammy Rose would want you to save Sweet Haven. And who knows, maybe this James guy is exactly what you need right now, even if it's just as a friend and business partner. With that night, Emma lay in bed above the bakery, her hand on her belly where the baby, a girl according to the ultrasound, was doing somersaults. What do you think, little one? She whispered. Should we trust him? The baby kicked, a firm thump against Emma's palm, and she laughed, a real laugh, not the brittle sound she'd been making for months. I'll take that as a yes. The next morning, when James arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, Emma was waiting with fresh cinnamon rolls and an answer. Yes, she said simply. I'll accept your offer. Let's save Sweet Haven together. James's smile transformed his face, erasing years of weariness. You won't regret this, Emma. I promise. As he shook her hand to seal the deal, Emma felt something shift inside her, not just hope now, but possibility. For the first time since Jason had walked out, since she'd seen those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, since the bank had sent the foreclosure notice, Emma felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. She didn't know it yet, but she was right. Though the path ahead would hold challenges she couldn't imagine, it would also hold joy, healing, and a love that would teach both her and James what it truly meant to be whole. The transformation of Sweet Haven began immediately. Within 48 hours of Emma accepting James's offer, contractors arrived to repair the aging ovens, replace broken refrigeration units, and restore the bakery's original charm. Emma watched in amazement as her grandmother's dream space slowly came back to life. I can't believe this is happening, she told Sarah, who'd given her notice at the insurance office and was now covered in flour beside Emma, learning the intricacies of Grammy Rose's recipes. Believe it, honey, Sarah grinned, shaping croissant dough with growing confidence. And can I just say, your mysterious benefactor has excellent taste. These vintage light fixtures he found are gorgeous. Emma had to admit James had an eye for detail. He'd somehow tracked down period-appropriate fixtures and furniture that honored Sweet Haven's history while modernizing the workspace. But more than that, he'd shown surprising knowledge about baking itself. The humidity needs to be controlled more carefully, he'd said the previous day, examining the bread proofing area. May I suggest a dedicated proofing box? It would give you more consistent results. How do you know about proofing boxes? Emma had asked, surprised. A shadow had crossed James's face. My mother. Before the restaurant failed, she'd been developing her own bread line. She taught me the basics before... He'd trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. Anyway, I think it would help. What do you think? Emma found herself looking forward to James's daily visits. They'd settled into a routine. He'd arrive at 7. They'd discuss the inn's needs and Sweet Haven's capabilities over coffee and whatever Emma had fresh from the oven. And he'd stay for an hour before heading to oversee the Morrison estate renovation. But today, 3 weeks into their partnership, James arrived at 6:30, looking disheveled and distressed. His tie was loosened, his usually neat hair standing in peaks, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "James, what's wrong?" Emma abandoned the sourdough starter she'd been feeding and moved toward him, alarmed. "I'm sorry for coming early. He sank into a chair, dropping his head into his hands. "I got a call last night. My ex-fiancée is getting married. To my former business partner, the one who tried to convince our board to remove me as CEO when I refused to cut costs by outsourcing jobs overseas." Emma poured him coffee without asking, adding the splash of cream and single sugar she'd learned he preferred. "I'm sorry. That must hurt." "The worst part," James laughed bitterly, accepting the cup. "I'm not even hurt about her. I realized months ago I didn't love her. I loved the idea of her, of having someone to share my life with. But my business partner, we'd been friends since college. His betrayal." He shook his head. "It reminded me why I came to Millbrook. Why I can't trust people easily." Emma sat across from him, her hand instinctively moving to her belly where the baby was beginning her morning acrobatics. "Trust is a luxury some of us can't afford," she said quietly. "I understand that better than you know." James looked up, meeting her eyes. "Because of your ex." "Jason didn't just leave me pregnant and alone," Emma found herself confessing. "He emptied our joint savings account. Told everyone in town I'd tricked him, that I'd gotten pregnant on purpose to trap him. I lost friends, lost customers who believed his version of events. The bakery started failing not just because of competition, but because people thought I was some kind of scheming woman who'd tried to trick a man into marriage. Emma, the irony is, I'd been taking birth control faithfully, but antibiotics can interfere with effectiveness. Something my doctor forgot to mention when she prescribed them for a sinus infection. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified, but I was also happy. I wanted this baby. I wanted a family." Her voice cracked. Jason looked at me like I was dirt on his shoe and walked away. "So yes, James, I know about betrayal. I know about having your world turned upside down by people you trusted." For a long moment they sat in the quiet bakery, two wounded souls finding unexpected comfort in shared pain. Then James reached across the table, his hand covering Emma's. "I'm sorry," he said simply, "for what he did, for what you've endured. You deserved better." "So did you," Emma replied, her fingers curling around his. "Your ex and your friend, they were fools to lose you." Something electric passed between them, a connection deeper than sympathy. Emma felt it in her bones, in the way her breath caught, in the sudden racing of her heart. This was dangerous territory. She was pregnant, vulnerable, in no position to develop feelings for anyone, especially not a millionaire who would surely leave Millbrook once the inn was complete. She pulled her hand away gently. "I should get back to work. The sourdough won't wait." "Right, of course." James stood abruptly, looking as unsettled as Emma felt. "I'll come back at the usual time." But at the door, he paused. "Emma, thank you for listening, for understanding, for not looking at me like I'm just a bank account with legs. That's not what I see when I look at you," Emma said before she could stop herself. "What do you see?" She should have said something neutral, something safe. Instead, the truth tumbled out. "I see someone kind. Someone wounded trying to heal by helping others heal. Someone who understands that money can't buy the things that really matter." James's expression softened into something that made Emma's heart skip. "And when I look at you, I see the strongest person I've ever met. A woman who's fighting for her child, for her family's legacy, who won't compromise her integrity even when it would be easier. I see someone extraordinary." Then he was gone, the bell chiming his departure, leaving Emma standing in a pool of morning sunlight with tears on her cheeks and hope blooming dangerous and wild in her chest. Sarah emerged from the back, where she'd clearly been eavesdropping. "Emma Mitchell, that man is in love with you. Don't be ridiculous. I'm 7 months pregnant with another man's baby. He's just being kind." "Honey, I've seen kind. That wasn't kind. That was a man falling head over heels and trying desperately not to show it." Sarah squeezed Emma's shoulder. "Question is, how do you feel about him?" Emma pressed her hands to her warm cheeks. "I don't know. I'm terrified. I can't afford to trust anyone, especially not now. What if he's just feeling sorry for me? What if he leaves like Jason did? What if he's genuine? Sarah interrupted gently. What if he's exactly who he seems to be? A good man who sees how amazing you are. Emma, not every man is Jason, and you deserve to be happy. I'm having a baby in 2 months. I can't think about relationships or feelings or... A sharp pain lanced through Emma's abdomen, cutting off her words. She gasped, gripping the counter for support. Emma! Sarah rushed to her side. What's wrong? I don't know, just a pain. It's probably nothing. But even as she said it, another contraction seized her, this one stronger. Oh, God! I'm calling an ambulance, Sarah said, already pulling out her phone. No, I can't afford... I'm calling James too. Don't argue with me. The next hours passed in a blur. The ambulance ride, the hospital, doctors examining her with serious faces. Emma lay in the hospital bed, terrified, one hand on her belly, where the baby had stopped moving, with her usual vigor. Please, she whispered to any deity that might be listening. Please let her be okay. I'll do anything. Just let my baby girl be okay. Emma. James's voice cut through her panic, and suddenly he was there, taking her hand in his. His hair was wild, his expensive suit disheveled. He must have run from wherever he'd been. I'm here. You're not alone. James, she sobbed, clinging to him. Something's wrong with the baby. The doctors won't tell me anything, and I'm so scared and... Shh. Breathe with me, in and out. That's it. His thumb traced circles on her palm, grounding her. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You hear me? You're not alone anymore. A doctor entered, clipboard in hand, and Emma's heart seized, but the older woman was smiling. Good news, Miss Mitchell. Your baby is fine. You experienced false labor, Braxton Hicks contractions, quite common at this stage. However, you're dehydrated and malnourished. When was the last time you had a proper meal? Emma flushed, shame heating her cheeks. I've been so focused on getting the bakery running again, I forgot to eat yesterday, and maybe the day before. Emma, James breathed, horror and concern mixing in his voice. The doctor's expression turned stern. Ms. Mitchell, you're carrying a child. You need to take care of yourself. I'm going to keep you overnight for observation and IV fluids, and I want to see you eating 3 full meals a day from now on. Do you understand? I understand, Emma whispered. After the doctor left, Emma couldn't meet James's eyes. I'm sorry. You must think I'm a terrible mother already, not even taking care of myself properly. Look at me. James's voice was gentle, but firm. When she finally raised her eyes to his, she found no judgment there, only compassion. You're not a terrible mother. You're a woman who's been doing everything in her power to provide for her child. But Emma, you can't take care of her if you don't take care of yourself first. I know, everything's been so overwhelming, which is why you're going to let me help more, not just with the bakery, with everything. He squeezed her hand. Starting with this, I'm hiring a meal service to deliver food to you 3 times a day. Don't argue, he added, when Emma opened her mouth to protest. Consider it a business expense. I need my exclusive bakery supplier healthy and strong. Emma wanted to argue, wanted to cling to her pride, but lying in that hospital bed, feeling how weak and tired she truly was, she realized Sarah was right. Not every man was Jason. James had proven himself over and over with his actions, his kindness, his steadfast presence. Maybe it was time to trust again. Maybe it was time to let someone in. Okay, she said softly. Thank you, James, for everything, for being here, for caring, for seeing me. Always, he promised, and in his storm-grey eyes Emma saw a future she'd thought was lost forever, one filled with hope, partnership, and perhaps eventually love. Emma's overnight hospital stay became a turning point. True to his word, James arranged for nutritious meals to be delivered to her apartment above the bakery 3 times daily. More than that, he began showing up not just as a business partner, but as a friend who genuinely cared about her well-being. 2 weeks after the hospital scare, Emma stood in Sweet Haven's renovated kitchen, marveling at how much had changed. The bakery was thriving. The Morrison Inn's grand opening was just days away, and Emma had hired 2 additional assistants to help meet the demand. Sarah had become invaluable, managing the front of house, while Emma focused on perfecting the recipes that would grace the inn's tables. But the biggest change wasn't in the bakery, it was in Emma herself. She was 8.5 months pregnant now, her belly round and full. The baby, whom she'd decided to name Rose after her grandmother, was active and healthy, and Emma had gained something she thought she'd lost forever: confidence in herself and hope for the future. "You're glowing," Sarah observed, watching Emma pipe delicate cream into profiteroles. "And don't tell me it's just the pregnancy glow. You've been smiling more lately." Emma couldn't deny it. Despite her best efforts to keep things professional, her feelings for James had grown deeper with each passing day. The way he remembered how she liked her tea, the children's books he'd started leaving in the bakery for Rose, the tender way he'd helped her up the stairs to her apartment when she'd stumbled, dizzy from standing too long. "He makes me feel safe," Emma admitted quietly, "like I can trust the world again." "Have you told him how you feel?" "I can't. Sarah, I'm about to have another man's baby. What could I possibly offer someone like James? He could have anyone, someone without baggage, someone who isn't exhausted all the time, someone who—" The bell above the door chimed, and Emma's heart did its now familiar leap when James entered. But her smile faded when she saw his expression, stormy and troubled. "James? What's wrong?" "We need to talk." His voice was tight, controlled. "Is there somewhere private?" Emma's stomach dropped. Those words, "we need to talk," were the same ones Jason had used before destroying her life. Sarah caught her eye, concern written across her face, but Emma squared her shoulders. Whatever this was, she would face it with dignity. "Let's go to the office," she said, leading James to the small room behind the kitchen. Once the door closed, James began pacing like a caged animal. "I received a call this morning from my board of directors. There's been talk. About us. About our arrangement." "A talk? What kind of talk?" James stopped, meeting her eyes with an anguish that made Emma's breath catch. "Someone saw us at the hospital. They took photos of me holding your hand, looking concerned. The story got back to Chicago. Twisted, of course. Now there are rumors that I've gotten my small-town baker pregnant, that I'm hiding in Millbrook to avoid scandal, that the inn is just a cover for an illicit affair." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "But that's not true. We're just business partners, friends. I know that, you know that, but perception is everything in my world, Emma. The board is threatening to remove me as CEO if I don't handle this situation immediately. They want me back in Chicago, away from Millbrook, away from—" He swallowed hard. "Away from you." The pain in Emma's chest was physical, sharp and devastating. "So you're leaving?" "No!" James crossed to her in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. "Emma, listen to me. I don't care about the board. I don't care about the rumors. I care about you, about Rose, about Sweet Haven and this community we've been building together. But your company can survive without me as CEO. Emma, these past weeks with you have taught me something crucial. I built Whitmore Industries to honor my mother's memory, to prove that business could be both profitable and ethical. But somewhere along the way, it became about power and status. Being here with you, I've remembered what really matters." Emma searched his face, afraid to hope. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm not going anywhere. I'm saying that what we have, this partnership, this friendship, it matters more to me than any boardroom or bottom line." He took a shaky breath. "I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, Emma Mitchell. And I don't care who knows it." The world seemed to stop. Emma heard the words, but couldn't quite believe them. "James, you can't. I'm pregnant with another man's child. I'm complicated and messy and brave and beautiful and stronger than anyone I've ever met." James cupped her face gently. "When I look at you, I don't see someone else's child. I see a miracle that you're bringing into the world with such courage and love. I see a woman who's taught me what it means to fight for what matters. Emma, I know this is fast. I know the timing is terrible. But I also know that I want to be here for you, for Rose, for whatever comes next. If you'll let me." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Jason hurt me so badly. What if—" "I'm not Jason." James's voice was firm, his grey eyes blazing with intensity. "I will never abandon you. I will never make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are. And I will love Rose as if she were my own, if you'll allow me that honor." Something in Emma's chest cracked open. All the walls she'd built, all the fear she'd carried. She saw in James's eyes what she'd been too afraid to acknowledge in her own heart. Love. Real, honest, transformative love. "I love you too," she breathed. "I've been falling for you since that first morning when you bought everything in my cases and gave me hope when I had none left." James's smile was radiant, erasing all the weariness from his features. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she didn't, he kissed her with a tenderness that made her soul sing. It was nothing like Jason's demanding kisses. This was gentle, reverent, a promise of forever wrapped in the simple press of lips. When they pulled apart, Emma was laughing and crying at once. "Your board is going to be furious." "Let them be. I'm resigning as CEO, effective immediately." At Emma's shocked expression, James grinned. "I've been wanting to step back for years, focus on smaller projects, on community building. The Morrison Inn will be the first of many ventures, not a chain of impersonal hotels, but individual projects that honor local culture and support local businesses, like Sweet Haven. But your company, your legacy—" "My legacy will be what I build here with you. If you'll have me, Emma. I know it's soon. I know you might need time, but—" The office door burst open. Sarah stood there, eyes wide. "Emma, we have a problem. There's someone here demanding to see you. He says he's the baby's father." Emma's world tilted. "Jason? He's in the bakery. And Emma—" "He brought a lawyer." James's arm immediately circled Emma's shoulders, protective and strong. "Whatever this is, we'll face it together. You're not alone." But as they walked out to confront the man who'd shattered her life, Emma felt fear claw at her newfound happiness. Jason stood by the counter, looking as handsome and charming as ever in an expensive suit. Next to him, a severe woman in a grey pantsuit held a briefcase. "Emma," Jason said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "You look, well, pregnancy suits you." "What are you doing here, Jason?" Emma's voice was steadier than she felt, thanks to James's solid presence beside her. "I've come to my senses. I want to be a father to our child. I want us to be a family." His eyes flicked to James with thinly veiled hostility. "Unless you've already replaced me with your new sugar daddy." Emma felt James tense beside her, but she stepped forward, drawing strength from her anger. "You lost the right to call yourself this baby's father when you walked away, when you stole from me, when you destroyed my reputation. I made a mistake. I panicked. But I'm here now, ready to step up, and my lawyer has informed me that I have parental rights." Jason's smile turned cruel. "I'm filing for joint custody, Emma, whether you like it or not." The room spun. Emma gripped the counter, feeling her carefully rebuilt world crumbling around her. Jason couldn't take Rose. He couldn't. Not when she'd fought so hard to build a life for her daughter. "You're not taking our baby," Emma said, her voice shaking with rage and fear. "Our baby?" Jason laughed. "Emma, you can't keep me from my own child. The law is on my side." "Actually," James said quietly, stepping forward, "I think you'll find the law is more complex than that. Especially when we present evidence of financial abandonment, theft, and defamation." Jason's lawyer spoke for the first time, her voice cold. "Mr. Whitmore, this is a private family matter. I suggest you stay out of it unless you want to complicate things further for Ms. Mitchell." "Oh, I'm very much a part of this family," James replied, his tone ice and iron. "And I have excellent lawyers who will fight every inch of the way to protect Emma and Rose from a man who's proven himself unfit for parenthood." "We'll see you in court," Jason sneered. Then his eyes fell on Emma's belly. and something calculating crossed his face. "By the way, Emma, I notice you're quite far along. Due soon?" Emma's hand moved protectively to her stomach. 2 weeks. Perfect. I'll be there for the birth. After all, a father should be present when his daughter enters the world. Jason's smile was poisonous. "See you at the hospital, Emma. I'm not going anywhere." As Jason and his lawyer left, Emma felt her knees buckle. James caught her, holding her as she finally broke sobbing against his chest. "He can't take her," she cried. "James, he can't take my baby girl." "He won't," James promised fiercely. "I swear to you, Emma, he won't take Rose. We'll fight him with everything we have." But as Sarah locked the door and James held her while she wept, Emma felt fear settle deep in her bones. The happy ending she'd started to believe in seemed suddenly, terrifyingly fragile. And with Rose's birth just days away, the storm that had been gathering finally broke. The contractions started at 3 in the morning, exactly 10 days after Jason's unwelcome return. Emma woke to a tightening across her belly that took her breath away. For a moment, she lay in the darkness of her apartment, counting the seconds, trying to determine if this was false labor again or the real thing. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, and Emma knew. Rose was coming. Her first instinct was to call James, but she hesitated, her phone in her trembling hand. They'd spent every day together since his declaration of love, but he'd been careful not to push, giving her space to process everything while Jason's custody threat loomed over them. James's lawyers had been working tirelessly, gathering evidence of Jason's abandonment and theft, but the legal battle was far from over. The phone rang in her hand, startling her. James's name flashed on the screen. "Emma?" His voice was alert, despite the early hour. "I had a feeling. Are you okay?" Despite her fear, Emma smiled. Somehow he'd known. "The baby's coming. Contractions are about 6 minutes apart. I'm on my way. Don't move. I'll be there in 5 minutes." He made it in 4. Emma heard his footsteps pounding up the stairs, and then he was there, still in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair wild from sleep, looking more beautiful to her than any man had a right to be. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling beside where she sat on the edge of her bed. "Ready to meet your daughter?" "I'm terrified," Emma admitted. "Not just about the birth. About Jason showing up. About him trying to take her. About—" "Stop!" James took her hands in his. "Right now, in this moment, we focus on bringing Rose safely into the world. Everything else can wait. Can you do that for me? For her?" Emma nodded, drawing strength from his calm presence. "Okay." The drive to the hospital was a blur of contractions and James's steady voice coaching her through breathing exercises. When they arrived, a nurse whisked Emma into a delivery room while James handled the paperwork. Emma heard him on the phone, his voice firm and authoritative as he spoke to his lawyers. "I don't care what time it is. If Jason Mitchell shows up at this hospital, I want you here immediately. Yes, both of you. Emma needs to focus on delivering her baby without fear." Hours passed in a haze of pain and pushing. James never left her side, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, being the partner she'd never dared to hope for. The nurses mistook him for the father, and neither Emma nor James corrected them. "You're doing amazing," James murmured during a particularly intense contraction. "So strong, Emma. Rose is almost here." "I can't," Emma gasped, exhausted. "I can't do this anymore." "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know. Just a little more, love. Just a little—" "One more big push, Emma," the doctor encouraged. "Your baby's crowning." Emma gathered every ounce of strength she had left and pushed. The room filled with the sound she'd been waiting 9 months to hear, her daughter's first cry. "She's perfect," the doctor announced, placing the squirming, wailing bundle on Emma's chest. "Congratulations." Emma looked down at Rose's tiny face, red and scrunched and absolutely beautiful, and felt her heart crack open in a way she'd never experienced. This was love in its purest form, fierce, protective, all-consuming. "Hello, baby girl," she whispered through her tears. "I'm your mama. I've been waiting so long to meet you." James stood beside them, his eyes shining with tears as he gently touched Rose's tiny hand. The baby's fingers immediately curled around his, and something profound passed over James's face. Wonder, love, commitment. She's perfect, Emma. Absolutely perfect. For a moment the world was nothing but the three of them, Emma, James, and Rose, cocooned in a bubble of new family bliss. Then the door burst open. "Where's my daughter?" Jason's voice shattered the peace. He stood in the doorway, disheveled and aggressive, trying to push past a nurse. "I have a right to see my child!" Emma instinctively clutched Rose closer, her body tensing. James immediately positioned himself between Jason and the bed, his posture protective. "Mr. Mitchell, you need to leave," the nurse said firmly. "Only approved visitors are allowed in the delivery room. I'm the father. I have rights." "Actually," a new voice cut through the chaos, "your rights are currently under legal review." Emma looked past Jason to see two men in expensive suits entering the room, James's lawyers. Behind them, looking official and stern, was a police officer. "What is this?" Jason demanded. The older lawyer, a silver-haired man named Richard Chen, stepped forward with a folder. "Mr. Mitchell, we've filed an emergency petition with family court. Given the evidence of your financial abandonment, theft from Ms. Mitchell, and defamation of her character, along with your complete absence during the pregnancy, the judge has granted a temporary restraining order. You're to maintain a distance of at least 100 yards from Ms. Mitchell and her child pending a full custody hearing." Jason's face turned red. "You can't do this. That's my daughter. A daughter you showed no interest in until you learned Ms. Mitchell had found happiness with someone else," Richard continued coolly. "We have documented evidence of your theft from your joint account, witness statements regarding your defamation of Ms. Mitchell, and proof that you made no attempt to support her or the child during the pregnancy. The court takes these matters very seriously." The police officer stepped forward. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. If you violate the restraining order, you'll be arrested." Jason's eyes found Emma's, and for a moment she saw something that might have been genuine regret. But then his expression hardened. "This isn't over, Emma. She's my daughter, and I will fight for her." "Then fight properly," James said, his voice steel wrapped in silk. "Through the legal system, with evidence of your commitment to Rose's well-being, not through intimidation and threats." As the officer escorted Jason from the room, Emma felt the tension drain from her body. Rose, who'd been fussing during the confrontation, settled back into sleep against her mother's chest. "Is it really over?" Emma asked, looking between James and the lawyers. "The immediate threat is," Richard assured her. "The restraining order is in place. Jason will have his day in court, but given the evidence, I'm confident the judge will rule in your favor, especially when we present evidence of his recent behavior, showing up here, creating a scene in a hospital delivery room. It doesn't exactly demonstrate stable judgment or concern for the child's well-being." After the lawyers left, promising to stay available by phone, Emma and James were finally alone with Rose. The baby was nursing peacefully, her tiny hand resting against Emma's skin when James spoke. "Emma, there's something I need to ask you, and I know the timing is terrible, but I can't wait any longer." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Where he'd been hiding it, Emma couldn't imagine. "I love you. I love Rose. I want to build a life with both of you, to be the father she deserves and the partner you need. I know we've only known each other for 2 months. I know this is fast. But when you know, you know." He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring with a single diamond. "Emma Mitchell, will you marry me?" Emma looked from the ring to James's hopeful face to her daughter, sleeping peacefully in her arms. 6 months ago, she'd been abandoned, broke, and hopeless. Now, holding her baby girl, with a man who loved them both kneeling beside her bed, she understood what her grandmother had always meant about life's surprising sweetness. "Yes," she whispered, fresh tears streaming down her face. "Yes, James, 1,000 times yes." James slipped the ring onto her finger, then carefully gathered both Emma and Rose into his arms. "I promise you both," he said softly. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how loved you are." 3 months later, Emma stood in Sweet Haven Bakery, now thriving beyond her wildest dreams. The Morrison Inn had been a massive success, with food critics raving about the authentic, heartfelt pastries from local treasure Sweet Haven. Emma had hired a full staff, allowing her to balance work with motherhood. Rose, now a chubby, happy 3-month-old, dozed in a carrier on Emma's chest while Emma supervised the morning's production. James was at the inn, overseeing final preparations for a wedding reception, their wedding reception. They'd decided on a small ceremony at the bakery where they'd met, where Emma's life had transformed from despair to joy. The space had been decorated with flowers from local gardens, and Grammy Rose's favorite hymn would play as Emma walked down the makeshift aisle. "You ready?" Sarah asked, helping Emma into the simple white dress they'd chosen, elegant, comfortable, and designed to accommodate Emma's post-pregnancy body with kindness. "More than ready," Emma replied, adjusting Rose in her carrier. "Is it crazy that I'm bringing her to my own wedding? It's perfect. She's part of this love story." Sarah's eyes misted. "I'm so happy for you, Em. You deserve every bit of this joy." The custody battle with Jason had been resolved weeks earlier. The judge, presented with overwhelming evidence of Jason's abandonment and recent erratic behavior, had terminated his parental rights, especially after Jason admitted he'd only sought custody to punish Emma for moving on. James had immediately filed paperwork to adopt Rose, a process that would be finalized within months. As Emma stood at the back of the bakery, waiting for her cue to walk toward James, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the fear, the moments when she'd thought she couldn't go on, all of it had led to this moment of perfect happiness. James stood at the front, looking handsome in his suit, his eyes locked on Emma with such love and devotion that her breath caught. Beside him stood the officiant, and gathered around were the people who mattered: Sarah, the bakery staff, neighbors from Millbrook who'd supported Emma through her darkest days, and James's mother's family, who'd welcomed Emma and Rose with open arms. As she walked toward James, Rose stirring awake in her carrier, Emma understood the lesson her journey had taught her, that true love doesn't come to rescue you. It comes to walk beside you, to honor your strength while offering support, to build something beautiful together from the rubble of past pain. "Hi," she said softly when she reached James. "Hi," he replied, his smile radiant. "Ready to start forever?" Emma looked at their daughter, already loved by the man who'd chosen to be her father. She looked at the bakery that had survived against all odds. She looked at James, who'd transformed from a wounded stranger into her partner, her love, her home. "I've been ready since the morning you walked into my bakery and bought everything," she said. "The morning you taught me that sometimes, when life leaves you with nothing, the universe sends exactly what you need." "And what's that?" James asked, though his eyes said he already knew. "Hope," Emma answered. "Love, and the courage to believe in happy endings." As they exchanged vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other and rose through whatever came next, Emma felt her grandmother's presence like a warm embrace. Grammy Rose had been right all along. Baking was love made edible, and life, when you mix the right ingredients with faith and courage, could rise into something more beautiful than you ever imagined. Outside Sweet Haven Bakery, a light snow began to fall over Millbrook, Ohio, dusting the small town in white like powdered sugar on a perfect wedding cake. And inside, surrounded by the scent of fresh bread and cinnamon, two wounded souls who'd found each other sealed their promises with a kiss, beginning a new chapter written not in pain, but in joy, partnership, and the sweetest kind of love, the kind that transforms everything it touches. The end.